Hey guys, today we're going to set up and install MySQL. Now we're going to be doing this on Ubuntu 20.04, and we're actually going to do both MySQL and MariaDB in parallel. So you'll notice on the right side here I have my guide that I just put together for MySQL and MariaDB. And you'll notice on the left side here we have two terminals open, logged into two different servers. The server on the top is going to have MySQL, and the server on the bottom is going to have MariaDB. So, and we compared them a little bit in this document, and we're going to do that a little bit when we demo this here. So, actually installing them is relatively easy. And we're actually, so on this version of Ubuntu, this is going to result in us having MySQL version 8.0.23 and MariaDB server 10.3.29. So different versions, and they don't quite match up. So that's a whole nother story, but this is what you're going to get. MariaDB is basically, for those of you not familiar with it, it historically has been a drop-in replacement for MySQL, but in more recent versions I believe it's supposed to be less of a drop-in replacement, but it's basically created by the same people who, or at least the same guy who created MySQL. So the original guy who created MySQL, eventually it changed hands and eventually ended up belonging to Sun Microsystems. Sun Microsystems was bought out by Oracle. Oracle ended up controlling MySQL. A lot of people didn't like this apparently, and the guy who originally created MySQL I guess forked it and created MariaDB. So MariaDB is a fork of MySQL created by the guy who originally created MySQL. So it gets a lot of credit, and it's become very popular almost right away in the open source world. So MySQL is still owned by Oracle at the time of this recording, and Oracle does do good things with databases, and as far as I understand, they are still doing good stuff with MySQL. A lot of people may not trust them, but they do good things with databases. So there's that. They're both valid choices, but we're just going to show you both of them. Personally, I would kind of lean towards Maria just because of my feelings about Oracle. Nothing that much against Oracle, but I just kind of prefer a more open solution. Not that, I mean, even MySQL is still open. Like, they have the Community Edition, but then they have the Enterprise Edition also, and it just seems more closed off, and the company that owns them is more proprietary, and they're more apt to not want to be open and give people, you just get more freedom with MariaDB, even if there's no specific things that are necessarily wrong with MySQL. But any case, they're both still valid choices and both great databases, and they're mostly compatible. They basically can do the same things. So we're going to show you how to install them. You're going to start out both servers. We're going to run apt-get update, and you could just run apt-update. So run that there, and run that there. So there we go. So that command will basically just refresh the information that our server has about the repo. So the repo where it pulls down all the packages from the Ubuntu repo, this just updates it with the latest information about what packages are available. So now that we've done that, usually you want to do that before you install any new packages. So let's install MySQL on this first server. So all right, just MySQL server, and at the same time we're going to install MariaDB server on the second server right here. Now interesting thing, both MySQL server and MariaDB server are in the Ubuntu repository, so they're both made available. It's not like they had to choose one or the other and decide which one is better for Ubuntu. They just made both of them available, which is very nice. Nice to have the option anyways. So this should not take too long. And there we go. Looks like it's running. So it looks like Maria finished a little bit sooner. We did get a message that MySQL is up and running, but it looks like it's doing a few other things. And there we go. Now it is done. So let's see here. Let's check the version on each one. So first, let's check the server version. So paste that in here and down here. So you'll notice that as we had mentioned before, with MySQL you get 8.0.25, and it shows the build. It's built for Ubuntu and stuff. And with Maria you have 10.3.29. The build was for Ubuntu x86, blah blah blah. So, but this is the server version right here, 10.3.29 and 8.0.25. So the client is actually, so the server version is probably what you want to pay attention to most, but worth noting, the client version can differ from the server version. And so the client came along with the same package, but it's going to have a different version for some of these. So you'll notice for MySQL, the client version 8.0.25 matches the server version 8.0.25, but with Maria, the server version was 10.3.29, and yeah, all right, so it looks like they just use a totally different versioning number. So it does still say it's distributed for 10.3.29 MariaDB, but I guess the actual version of this CLI is 15.1. In any case, not worth, honestly, I don't pay attention to that almost at all. I would mostly only just pay attention to the server version. The CLI is going to do its job just fine, and the server is really what's doing the work on the back end anyways. So there you go. That's what you get when you install that using the repo on Ubuntu. So we're going to run there are a lot of different steps that historically have been recommended to secure MySQL, like, making sure there's a password on all accounts and maybe only local logins if you only want local logins and things like that. But, removing test users and test databases and users with no passwords. But there's a tool that does that for us. There's a script called MySQL Secure Installation. It comes with Maria and with MySQL. And there are slightly different options for each one, so we're going to try both of those. So let's look on the top here first. So we're going to say yes to validate. So why? This makes it a little bit tougher for testing because you can't give it a quick, easy, short password just for test purposes, but it's great in production. So validate password component. So this is, if you say yes to this, it's basically going to force you to use a good password. So we're going to say yes just to show you what it's like using strong passwords. You can choose the strength. Low would be length is over 8, medium would be length over 8, numeric, mixed case, special characters, and strong would be so all of the above and a dictionary file. So it runs it against a dictionary file. Okay. So you could choose which one you want. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna go with low, so 0 for low. Because it's not going to make the demo any different. I'm not really going to show my password, and it doesn't matter. I'm gonna, if you want it to force you to use a stronger password, you can. For demonstration purposes, this is just fine. All right, so do you wish to continue with the password provided? And yes. And remove anonymous users, yes. Disallow root login remotely, yes. Remove test database and access to it, yes. Reload privilege tables now, yes. And there you go, all done. Now, here it just asks us for the password. It doesn't have the the validate password functionality in MariaDB. So that's fine. So enter current password for root. All right, and it was blank by default. So set root password, yes. And there we go. Has an anonymous user, so remove anonymous user, yes. Deny remote root, yes. Remove test database, yes. And reload privileges, yes. There we go. That was kind of pretty similar to, I guess the big difference is the validate password functionality on MySQL. So there we go. We've installed MySQL on both of these, and we run the secure installation to lock them down. So you'll notice both of them show MySQL running, even though this one is MySQL and this is Maria. They both run a process called MySQLD because that's what it was named. And when they forked Maria, they still all the everything was still kept the same names. All the processes and scripts and stuff had the same names. It's just the branding changed basically. So anyways. DB initialization. So normally setting up MySQL, you would need to initialize the database. In older versions, you would be running a script called MySQL install DB, and in newer versions, it's MySQL d-initialize. We don't have to do that at all because we're running on Ubuntu, and in the Ubuntu package, that's done for you. So nothing to worry about there. We can basically skip over that. Now, post-install testing. So basically, right now we have MySQL installed, up and running, and we're basically ready to go. But we just want to do some testing and poke around and look at things. So basically, if you wanted to know how to install MySQL, this is it. We've got it installed and it's working. We haven't tested it or played around with it yet, but the rest of this video is just us testing it and playing around with it. And there is one slight tweak for security purposes. So right now you would actually have to log in as root to connect to the servers. Even though you have the password to log into MySQL, you should only have to specify it to MySQL. There is functionality that requires you to be logged in also as the root user. So worth noting in a production, side note, in a production case, you probably wouldn't want to run everything as root. The user we log into MySQL as is root right now, so you might want to create a special MySQL user to log into the database as for non-administrative tasks, just accessing user data and things like that. And you would also, there are steps you would go through to lock that down and stuff. So we're not covering that today, but we are covering connecting to it as the root user. And to log in as the root user, you actually have to log in as the root user on Linux and then log into the MySQL server as root. And we can disable that, and we're going to show you how to do that. So it's basically, we're going to show you how to do that, but we're also going to do a bunch of testing. And that's what's left for for the rest of this video. So let's just run a status command just to see the status of the service. So you can run it on both of these. And you'll notice there's a little bit more output here for MariaDB, but it's basically the same thing. They're both running. So the MariaDB service is named MariaDB, where MySQL, it's named MySQL, but the binary that it runs is just MySQLD on both of these. And anyways, basically, like the message for MySQL is server is operational. And on MariaDB, it says taking your SQL requests now. But essentially, it's basically doing all the same stuff. It's not that different. Anyways, enough of that. So we could stop and start. So we could stop the service like this. We could say stop sudo systemctl stop MySQL. And Okay. Paste this in here, stop the service. Now we can run status again and notice that it is stopped. Alright, so, whoops, yeah, so check the status, same deal, this is stopped. Server shutdown complete, MariaDB server is down, so that's the status. So they give you different status messages, but it means the same thing. So, yeah, so that's about it. We can start it back up using almost the same command, sudo systemctl start MySQL, start this guy up, and start this guy up. Now they're both up and running. We can check the status like this. Check the status, and it says, hey, the status is up and running. So there we go. That's how you start and stop it. So as for the CLI, we are going to check the version using this MySQL admin command. Now we're going to use sudo, because if we don't use sudo, it gives us an error. So there we go. So we're telling it to show us the version, and it's showing us the version, and in a little bit of like the uptime and stuff, and some other info about it, how many threads it's using, so on and so forth. Let's try this without sudo just to see the error message. Now without sudo, there we go. So there's an error. So even though we have the correct password, it gives us an error. So you need sudo. Now the other thing we can do, let's try logging into the client just to test this out. And there we go, we're in the client. So there we go. We can, show databases and run SQL commands. Works the same in both of them. Let's exit out of that. And so anyways, here in our document, we have this, see this red text here. It's not zoomed in much, but yeah, authentication issue. So there's an authentication issue where anytime you log in using a Unix socket, you need to be logged in as the correct user. So it's just a new feature that they've enabled in newer versions of MySQL and MariaDB. Now, if you like this feature, by all means leave it enabled. If you don't like it, you can disable it. I think there's not a whole lot of point to it, at least in my use cases. So I'm going to disable it, and I'm going to show you how to disable it. So first thing, log back into the server, and so we're in the CLI right now, right? Now we're going to say use MySQL to use this database. And this is the database that has a lot of information for for MySQL itself. And we have this command here. It says update user set authentication string. Now in newer versions, instead of the password column, they have the authentication string column. And instead of having, and you can't just pass your password to that. You couldn't do it in the past either. You couldn't just, assign your password to the password column. You have to assign the hash of your password. Only the hash gets stored. So in the past, you used to have this function called password. So you call password on your password, send your password to that as a parameter, and it will return the hash, and you can use that inside this command to assign it to the authentication string. You used to be able to do that. Now that function is deprecated, so now we use a combination of other functions. We have SHA-1, unhex, SHA-1, and upper, then concat. So we use this big long string of stuff to take passwords. So say if your password is the word secret password 5 ! You would put that inside this whole big long string of functions here to then get the hash that you would then assign to authentication string, where user equals root and host equals localhost. So you're going to assign that. So if you want to change the password, you can do it that way. And then you can say update user set plugin MySQL native password where user equals root. So for root, you're going to, so this is going to tell it to use the MySQL native password instead of using this feature above where it actually just uses this authentication plugin. So in any case, this will allow us to use a regular password to log in without having to be root. So I'm going to try this, and so I'm changing the password to secret password. This is different from what I was using before, and I'm then going to make this change so that we don't need to be logged in as root. And the last thing we're going to do for this is flush privileges. So flush privileges, and that makes flushing privileges actually pushes out all of those changes we made and makes them active. So anything related to privileges that we changed, in order for those to actually become active, we have to flush them out. So now let's exit out of here and try to log back in. Except instead of using sudo, let's try logging back in without sudo. And it should work now. Let's give it a shot. Alright, so it's asking us for a password, and let's use this password that we just set. Secret password 5 exclamation mark. There we go, it works for MySQL and for Maria. So now we can log in without having to use sudo, which is kind of nice. I don't think you should have to if you're, if you have the password for you could use it as another layer of security, but if you have the password for the database and you're on the local host anyways, you probably should be able to access the database, I would say. But I guess you could view that as another layer of security. Notice the prompt is slightly different here. Besides saying MariaDB, it says none. Let's see. So, yeah, old syntax look like this. Newer syntax looks like this. Just a little quick note on that. All right, so users and passwords. So this shows. So all right, we can log in. Now we're just going to take a look at what users are there. So we're going to use MySQL. All right, so we're going to use the database called MySQL, and we're going to select host, user, and authentication string from the user table. So let's copy this query here, paste it right in over here, and there we go. Now you're going to notice that there are some extra users on MySQL. We have Debian sysmate, MySQL info schema, MySQL session, and MySQL sys. Now these are users that are created for, I believe, internal use within the database, and you're not meant to ever log in as them. They're not meant to be used. Now you'll notice that it also has the root user, which is what we are logged in as now. Now you're going to notice that this root user is available on, so you get this user on MySQL, but look down here, you'll notice on MariaDB you only have the root user and you don't have all these extra users. So it's a little bit cleaner in MariaDB. Now I don't know the purpose of these, but it's something Oracle made up, I would assume, and there's probably a good reason for them to exist. Now you'll notice, I should point out, these have a password. This is a hash. That is a non-valid hash. There's no known password that would actually equal this hash. So you can't really log in as this. It says this is a combination of invalid, salted, and password that must never be used. So it's kind of, giving you a tip that, hey, this is not a real password hash, and it should never, no password should succeed with this. Basically, these accounts have no password. Probably the same thing with this, but I don't know. I'm actually not sure why this Debian sysmate user is here. And I don't know the repercussions from removing any of these extra users. Any case, so you could run a command that says delete from user where authentication string equals blank to delete extra users. Now, I'm going to paste this in the window just so you can see it, but we don't need to. I guess I just ran it, but it doesn't matter. So where authentication string equals blank, none of the authentication strings are blank, so that's not really doing anything. But if there were any users with a blank authentication string or blank password, you could easily delete them all using this command. Now we don't need to use that because we ran that secure install script at the beginning when we installed MySQL, and that would have removed any of these users presumably. I actually haven't taken a look at it in a recent version of MySQL without running that script. I know in past versions of MySQL, like a really long time ago, it used to be that you would have a bunch of extra users with blank passwords. You'd have a user for the local host, a user for whatever the IP address is for the machine, so you could log in remotely with no password, and you'd have to go through and make sure these were all set correctly. And you could use the admin command to change them, but really logging into the database was the one way to be sure. You could delete any extra accounts or at least set a password for any of those accounts. So these days with the way things are set up, you don't have to worry about that as much, so there's not really much point in having to delete extra users. But if you do find yourself in a situation where there are extra users, or maybe you didn't run the right script or something, that is an option that's there for you. So you could update the password using MySQL admin if you want. Let's give that a try. So let's exit out of here, and let's try running this. Whoops. And what did we have the old password set to? So let's see, secret password. Alright, so you'll notice it worked on MariaDB, but not on MySQL. So, you know what we're going to do? We should just take this, we should take the old password, and we should probably just change it slightly, just to demo changing a password. So we'll change this to a 6. So let's try this again. Whoops. So take this command and let's just paste this in here, paste this in here. So we're going to set it to almost the same password but slightly different. Put the current password in here, and actually the current password, it does give us a warning about sending the password over plain text. No big deal, unless you were sending this over the network or something, unless you connected remotely. And I believe I actually successfully set the password here, so I'm going to change it again here, and there we go. So now our password has been changed to secret password 6 exclamation mark. So yeah, that's how you can use the MySQL admin tool to change your password. Now Let's log back in with the, just log back in here with the client. Take this new password that we just assigned. And there we go. All right, so you might be curious to see how you could so let's give these commands a shot anyways. Let's use the MySQL database and let's tell it to we're going to take this command, but we're going to give it a better password. This is an example, but it's going to need a more secure password. So let's say if we set this to, secret password, but add a 7 in there instead of a 6. Let's see if this works. There we go. So alter user root at localhost identified by secret password 7. So let's, all right, so we've altered that. Let's say flush privileges. Whoops. I don't know how I managed to copy that. And again, I don't know how I managed to copy that. How am I not copying this? All right. I did not flush the privileges. So we're going to log in with, oh boy. All right, let's log back in with our current password since we didn't successfully flush the privileges. Access denied. All right, there we go. So it looks like I apparently somehow did manage to flush the privileges. So alter query OK. Yeah, I'm not sure why I was having copy paste issues there. Either it didn't need me to really flush the privileges, or it just I did flush them and there was just something weird with the output on this console. So I'm not sure, but anyways, let's try logging back in on both of these just to show that we can with the new password. So let's see here, change this to a 7. There we go. We can log into both of these. All right, so there we go. So this is one way you could change the password. Log back in and yeah, show all accounts. We pretty much did this before. I'm actually not sure why this is showing up this way. So apparently there's some strange behavior going on here with so after using alter user, the alter user command on MariaDB, it has apparently cleared the authentication string, as well as it did not clear it on MySQL, but it did clear it on MariaDB, which seems to still be working anyways. I'm going to actually point out something strange about MariaDB. I believe it actually still has a password field. It wasn't using this password field before. It was using authentication string instead. Now, if you run that same query on MySQL, MySQL does not have a password field. You can see it says unknown column, whereas it apparently does have that in MariaDB, but it wasn't using it. I know recently, it was more recent that MariaDB changed to using authentication string instead of password, whereas MySQL's been using it for longer. Looks like authentication string is looks like it was being used initially, but after running this alter user command, it changed it to use the password field instead of the authentication string. Maybe there's just a bug or something weird with this alter user command that causes it to do that, but it seems to apparently that might have something to do with it not requiring me to flush the privileges, and it might have something to either way, it still does seem to work, which is interesting. All right, so I brought up a new server and installed MariaDB on that, and didn't mess around with changing the password or anything. Just went through the secure install and that's it. And then I logged in and just queried both the password field and authentication string field, and it appears that by default both exist, and they set a password in the password field. So the secure install script sets a password in the password field, not in the authentication string field. So some commands will set one, some the other. There's some inconsistency. So I looked this up a little bit, and it turns out in so like we're using version 10.3.29, but supposedly in 10.4 they're going to do away with the password field completely and only use the authentication string field. So supposedly that's going to happen. I've also heard some there's actually a ticket open here. Apparently, so actually go back a page here. Apparently someone is recommending to get rid of this password column because it's already been removed from MySQL, and that they're recommending to remove it but keep support for it for old tables. I believe they're just completely going to remove it though. And this guy is talking about actually a new table replacing the user view, which will be called global priv. I haven't dug any deeper than this, but apparently there's going to be a new table replacing the users table, I believe, but I'm not completely sure about that, and I haven't dug any deeper on this. But apparently a lot of changes are coming up, and supposedly, according to a Stack Exchange thread I was looking at, supposedly, I have not dug too far with this, but supposedly they are going to do away with the password field, but it has not been removed yet in this version. So this is kind of redundant and inconsistent, which is unfortunate. But any case, so that's where we are with this right now. So we have both of these in MariaDB by default right now. So hopefully they'll be removing the password field soon in the near future, but we'll see. I haven't dug any more. You could dig more if you're curious. I may look into this more in the future. But yeah, I just wanted to add that update really quick. Probably going to just paste this little section in the end of my video. So yep, that's it. Let's see. So what else did we want to show? So we could also update this authentication string if we wanted, where user equals root and authentication string is blank. So similar to what we did here, we showed you could delete users that don't have an authentication string. Any user that doesn't have an authentication string, you could just update it to equal a known password. You could either of these commands should work. Yeah, so you could pass the hash if you know the hash. Like if you copied it from another database or another user that's already set up, you could specify the hash directly as the authentication string, or you could call the string of functions and pass the password that you want, and have that assigned to your authentication string. So this would be another way you could just set the password for anything with a blank authentication string. Now, after that, you'd flush privileges. Now, we're going to show you some. We already saw this before, but the example output for the user table, you notice the users were different in MySQL versus Maria. Interesting too. So that's pretty much everything we wanted to cover today. So we are just about done, but I do want to poke around with this a little bit more. So we've covered everything we meant to cover in this video, but let's just poke around a little bit more just to investigate. So I'm curious if we could run MySQL admin right here, and let's see, let's try just pasting in the password that we know is the password right now, and see if we had changed the password. All right, let's jump back into the CLI and use new password. So there we go, use MySQL all right, and let's run the same query from before. And that's interesting. So as you can see, it is now using both the authentication string and the password field. So that's interesting. So it looks like MariaDB has some inconsistent behavior. I have not investigated if this is supposed to work this way or what's going on with this, but so I haven't dug further with this. I'm not sure why it's behaving this way. Honestly, I think if they have already added the authentication string column, they should probably have removed the password column. I'm not sure why that's not the case, but apparently they left that in. And normally, if you change the password using the admin tool, it only changes it in authentication string. Or it changed, or I guess maybe it was changing it in both. Maybe this is like a transitional thing where both fields exist. And if you were to, probably both strings exist for compatibility, and maybe on the next release, they're going to remove the password field and leave authentication string in there. I'm not sure the reasoning behind this, but it seems that the MySQL admin command was able to change this field, and it worked. I guess it worked when we the alter user command, we used that, even though it made this blank, and I guess it was pulling the password from here. So I guess alter user will wipe the authentication string out but leave the password string, whereas the MySQL admin command will update probably both of these. Looks like it's updating both of these. And it would appear that it actually only uses this password, which is interesting. It uses the password field rather than the authentication string field, even though I believe we did change the password though to secret password 5 by setting the authentication string. So it could be, I'm really not sure why this is set up inconsistently like this. I don't have an answer for that at the time of this video, so it's a little unsettling, but it's something I might want to investigate in the future. No promises, but I mean, maybe I'll come out with another video talking about what my findings are, or maybe I won't. But yeah, so I guess that's it. That's pretty much it for today. That's all I really wanted to cover today. So yeah, if you like this video, you might want to give us a thumbs up. Definitely leave a comment down below. We want to know what you think. If you had any questions, comments, criticism, anything you want to say, we do want to hear it. And we try to get back to people's questions and read all of the comments eventually. Other than that, that's pretty much it. So You are going to want to hit the subscribe button for more awesome content like this. We do a lot of server related stuff, a lot of code, a lot of just technology stuff in general. We're even, going as we cover a lot of diverse technology stuff, from like hardware, software, code, 3D printing, networking, single board computers, electronics, all kinds of great technology related stuff. So you're probably going to want to subscribe if you're not subscribed already. You're probably going to want to hit the little bell icon so you know when a new video comes out. That's pretty much it for today though. So thanks for watching, and we will see you guys next time.